Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome back to Steelers Almighty, man. Woo! Minicamp is over. We got a lot to talk to you guys about today. We got a good show lined up for you here. Look, first things first. Zack Frazier, is he the next great Pittsburgh Steelers center? Had a great rookie season. We'll see if he's the next great one. And it's a long line of really good centers for the Steelers. Next, where does Rod Woodson stack up as far as the best Steeler? And what's kind of the truth behind why Rod Woodson didn't sign back with the Pittsburgh Steelers? We'll talk about that today. Deshon Elliott wants to be a Steeler. I think it's time that he gets an extension. We'll talk about if he does, should he, all that good stuff about Deshon Elliott coming off of his spectacular season last year. And then last but not least, Minicamp review. Going over some ins and outs of Minicamp. Make sure you guys definitely stick around for that. I've got some thoughts on what we saw, what we still need to see moving forward with that. So appreciate everybody being in here. Again, weekly, you can find Steelers Almighty at youtube.com/Steelers Almighty. On all your social media platforms, we're at Steelers Almighty. And if you prefer the audio version of this podcast, anywhere that you receive a podcast, you can find Steelers Almighty. So again, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in the comments section like you guys always do, and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. Without further ado, people, let's get into this thing. So for Zack Frazier, is he going to be the next great Pittsburgh Steeler as far as a center? Now, let's just kind of break it down. He had a great rookie season. There is no doubt about that. You just look at what he did, considering, heck, he wasn't even the starter going into training camp. He earned the job. Now, I think he might have earned the job, but who knows when he would have been the starter? It could have been week 4, and what a catastrophe that would have been. But unfortunately, their injury happened. He gets in and plays very well. Look, he started 16 games if you count the playoff game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Missed 2 to an ankle injury. And to be quite honest, we kind of dodged a bullet because you look at how he got hurt, that could have been worse. It could have been way worse for what the injury actually was. So he missed 2 weeks, comes back, played pretty good. He was the highest graded Steelers offensive lineman last year. Now, again, if you go off PFF, a lot of you do, some of you don't. I tell you to just use it as a tool because that's what I use it as. His PFF grade was 77.9, which is pretty good. He was the 5th highest center as far as PFF in the National Football League. To me, that's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff. Pass blocking rate was at 68.6. Run blocking was 80.5. The guy's doing some yeoman's work. He's doing some yeoman's work. Now, he also, some of the characteristics and some of his traits, I talked about it all season because, as you guys know, we do an all 22 of the offensive linemen during the season. And he's got a crazy motor. Now, is it Mason McCormick enthusiastic motor? No, it's not that, but it's still a motor. He blocks right after the whistle. Those are the kind of people that you love to have on your team, but you cannot stand playing against those type of people. That's what Zack Frazier is. Not to mention, he's very good. Sometimes those guys that do that, they're more of just pests that, they're constantly on you, constantly touching you. Well, he does that, but for the most part, those guys usually aren't very good. Zack Frazier's good. And that's what makes him even better, is that he's able to get inside, do those things, be a pest, have a motor, block you to right past the whistle, which is frustrating, but he's really, really good. So that's where he differs from a lot of guys that do that. Now, here's kind of the thought process. A lot of people talk about a sophomore slump. And look, sophomore slumps are real. That is not something that is, made up. It's not make believe or anything like that. Those are things that are 100% real. But you look at Zack Frazier, you look at his makeup, you look at how he plays football. This is not really a candidate for somebody that you would say that's going to have a sophomore slump. Because sophomore slumps are usually guys, they read their press clippings, um, they listen to a lot of outside noise, on how good they are, and then they don't work as hard. Look, Zack Frazier's the guy who crawled off a football field to save his team a timeout because he broke his leg. He did that. Hopped off a field because he's like, look, we need this timeout. We're trying to win. My broken leg is just a byproduct. Look, it's just in the way. I got to get off the field. That to me, like I said, doesn't sound or scream like a guy that's spending a whole lot of time, number one, reading his press clippings. Number two, cares a whole lot of what outside noise is saying. And three, isn't going to work hard to give you what you need on a year-to-year basis. So I'm not saying it can't happen. All I'm saying is the likelihood of Zack Frazier falling victim to a sophomore slump, in my opinion, is slim to none. It's slim to none. So doesn't mean it can't happen. I just don't see that happening with this guy. Now you go down the list here, and look, it's a tough act to follow. The greats are kind of what they are. You start off, you got Mike Webster. Mike Webster, a Hall of Famer with the Steelers, won 4 Super Bowls. Many consider him to be the greatest center of all time. And it's just that simple. Just that simple. The great Mike Webster, um, incredible football player. Just an incredible football player. But he's not the only one from the Steelers. Then you got Dermontti Dawson. Now, Dermontti Dawson unfortunately didn't win any Super Bowls, but Dermontti Dawson is obviously I shouldn't say obviously, but he's a Hall of Famer. 6 straight first team All Pros. That's Dermontti Dawson. Oh, by the way, he basically revolutionized the center position into what it is today. That's what Dermontti Dawson did. He revolutionized it, and how centers play in today's football is based off of this guy. That's how good he was. To say that he's not in the top 5 of all-time centers, if not the best, would be ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. But he doesn't get the pub and doesn't get the name because he didn't win a Super Bowl. So there's that. Next up, Maurkice Pouncey. Now, Pouncey didn't win a Super Bowl either, but Pouncey, 5-time All-Pro, 2-time first team, 3-time second team. He's also part of a 2010 All-Decade team. Just an absolute dynamo. Again, phenomenal football player. Played with some really good football players as well. David DeCastro played next to him. I mean, they had a good line, but he was kind of the linchpin. A lot of people believe that the Steelers would have won Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers if Pouncey would have played in the game, because the line looked disheveled at times, out of sorts, out of sync, because he had gotten hurt in the AFC Championship game. So, take that for what it will. But that's a lot of people to stack up and to have to, I guess, measure yourself up to as far as what Zack Frazier is concerned with. That's tough. That's tough, ladies and gentlemen. However, if it's going to continue to go like his rookie season went, then he's going to be right. His name is going to be right up there with these guys. It's going to be right up there with them. Let's get to the poll question, people. So, Zack Frazier. What aspect of Zack Frazier's performance impressed you the most in his rookie season? Is it A, his pass blocking, B, his run blocking, C, his toughness and grit, or D, quarterbacking the line? A, B, C, or D. Remember to put a 1 after your selection so we know exactly what poll question that you guys answered. Appreciate you guys. It's a good question. I like Zack Frazier. Really good football player, people. Really good football player. Let's move on. Okay. Where does Rod Woodson stack up? Look, Rod Woodson was a Pittsburgh Steeler for 10 years. A lot. I mean, he was a phenomenal football player. Let's just put that. But it goes deeper than that. Is that he was a phenomenal athlete. You know, he was a world class hurdler, 110 hurdler in high school, and he did it in college as well. Could have probably continued on if he wanted a track career, but instead he chose football. That's the kind of athlete that we're talking about with Rod Woodson. So, but he was an outstanding football player. But what's kind of some of the reasons on why he didn't sign? First, let's talk about what Rod Woodson was, and because he's an all-time great. And where does he stack up with you guys as far as being a Steeler? In my opinion, he's the number 2 defensive back of all time. Number 2. I don't care wherever you want to put him, safety. I think of Rod Woodson as a corner, obviously, because that's what he did with the Steelers. But I also recognize he was an all-pro and later in his career when he moved to safety. So I recognize that. But to me, he's a corner, and he's number 2 on my all-time list. He's that good, people. He's that good. He had 2 all-pro seasons, like I mentioned, as a safety. That doesn't happen that often later in his career. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 1993, 11-time Pro Bowler. Basically, he was a 9-time either first or second team All-Pro. 6 of those times he was a first team All-Pro. 3 other times he was a second team All-Pro. I mean, the guy's crazy. 2-time NFL interceptions leader, all decade, 75th anniversary, 100th year anniversary, Hall of Famer. I mean, it's Rod Woodson, people. That's who he is. Now, but why did he leave Pittsburgh? That's the thing. It's like 10 years, playing well, has football left, but he doesn't stay. Now, this is where, people kind of get sideways with Bill Cowher, because this was his choice. Now, you could say it was the Rooneys and all that stuff, but if you're going to blame Tomlin for stuff, for organization and player positions and all of that kind of stuff, you got to blame Bill Cowher as well, because he had his hand on the organization. He had his hand on, personnel matters just as much as Tomlin does, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But mistakes can be made. Bill Cowher made a mistake here, because basically Rod Woodson in 1995, we all know he tore his ACL. Steelers go on to make the Super Bowl. They lose to the Cowboys. But Rod Woodson, because he hurt his ACL the first game of the year, I believe it was the first or second. And then he comes back and plays in the Super Bowl. At that time, it was unheard of for somebody to come back from an ACL injury that quickly. Like, nobody was doing that. It was a year before you came back to even do anything. And he's back and played in the Super Bowl and broke up a few passes in the Super Bowl. That was Rod Woodson. So, yes, I get it. He tore his ACL, but then he played the 1996 season. So it wasn't like, hey, the Steelers needed to offer him a contract right after he blew his knee out. No, it was the next year. He played the 96 season, and then all of a sudden, they didn't want to offer him a contract, or they didn't offer him the contract that he wanted. He wanted a 5-year deal. The Steelers said 3, and they just kind of had a stalemate. And then draft comes, and all of a sudden the Steelers say, hey, they call him. What are you going to do? Are you going to take our deal? And he's like, you're on the phone. You're on the clock for the draft. What are you talking about? And basically gave him 45 seconds. Hey, man, we need a decision right now. Rod Woodson just hangs up the phone. And that was the end of his career in Pittsburgh. And he held a lot of bitterness for a while, but I think he deserved to. I think he deserved better. I mean, we sit here and we're talking about TJ Watt and paying TJ Watt, or should you? Rod Woodson could still play football and continued to go still play football. So like I said, not Bill Cowher's finest hour, not his finest hour. And it's okay to say he made a mistake, because he did. And again, Rod Woodson, I mean, did they even have the conversation of, hey, Rod, we want you here, but you got to move to safety. We want you to be a safety. Did they even have that conversation? If they didn't think he could play anymore, have that conversation. Doesn't sound like the Steelers did. They just moved on. Colossal mistake. In my opinion, it's a colossal mistake. So, again, I like Bill Cowher. I think Bill Cowher is an incredible football coach, but we all make mistakes, man. And I get personnel moves. And I know there's going to be some that say, well, he should have just taken the 3-year deal. Why? And Rod Woodson's point was, hey, it's none of the money's guaranteed. It's going to cost you less on the salary cap if you spread it out over 5 years. Why not just do that? Steelers said no. They only gave him 3. He ended up playing longer than 5 years after Pittsburgh anyway. Mistake. Just a mistake. But where do you think Rod Woodson is? Number 1 on your DB list, but on your Steeler list. To me, he's 2 in both. He's the second best defensive back. And corner. He's the second best in my opinion. And my personal favorite, he's the second of my favorite Pittsburgh Steeler. Joe Green is first, and then it's Rod Woodson right after that. So that's where I stand with Rod Woodson. I think he was incredible. Another mistake that the Steelers made, Rod Woodson coached football. He coached in the National Football League, and he went on, and I think he coached in the XFL and some of those other little gimmicky type of leagues is what I call them. But he coached football. He couldn't have helped Pittsburgh Steeler DBs. And I get that Woodson was mad. He was pissed off at the Steelers for a long time. Totally understand. So why bring that into the locker room? Maybe he didn't even want to come back. But at some point, he had to get past it, and he should have said, hey, Rod, look, we get it, but we'd love for you to come coach. Even if you're an assistant DB coach, to work your way up or to start there. Do you want to be a part of the organization? Doesn't sound like that was something, number 1, that he wanted to do, and number 2, that the Steelers even extended. It's too bad because he could have been a big part of what the Steelers were doing. Hell, you don't know. He could still be there. You have no idea. But either way, I love Rod Woodson. Let's go to the poll question here, people. Old Rod Woodson. So the poll question, poll 2 is, how do you feel about the Steelers' decision not to offer Rod Woodson a long-term deal after his injury? A, it was the right decision. Business is business. B, wrong decision. They should have kept him. C, uncertain, need more context. Or D, it was part of the NFL's harsh realities. I mean, first of all, I think every one of those answers is right. It's just your preference on what you think the Steelers should have done. Yeah, I don't think there's actually a wrong answer on here. It's just what you think the Steelers should have done. So A, B, C, or D, make sure to put a number 2 next to it so we know exactly what poll question you are answering. So let's move on, people. We're at the halftime. And want to thank everybody again, as always, for being a Steelers All Porter, whether you've subscribed to the channel, you're a member of the channel, you've bought some of our merchandise. We thank you from the bottom of our heart. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do. If you're not a member, members get special treatment because there's 5 different levels, special treatment in all the lives, discounts on all the merchandise that's available. Get access to all 22 chat rooms so you can catch all the all 22s. And during the season, and the season's right around the corner, you're going to get access to live game day streaming. It's going to be you, me in the theater room watching all the games together. So make sure you sign up to become a member. But more importantly, continue to get in that comment section like you guys always do. So like, follow, subscribe, comment on the videos, and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Let's keep this thing moving. So Deshon Elliott, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it time to give Deshon Elliott a new contract, you know. Um, Now here's the first thing is it's June and there's time. And we've seen some of these deals before where the Steelers say, hey, we're going to extend you, but they usually do it right before training camp, in training camp, sometime right around then, which is okay. There's no issue with the Steelers doing it then. But should they? Well, let's kind of dive into that. First off, he was rock solid with the Steelers last year. In my opinion, he was the best secondary player. You could argue that he might have even been the best defensive player for the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. The things that he was doing in coverage, at the line of scrimmage, down in the box, played outstanding football. My thing is, it's so weird. Well, some of the numbers, he had 108 tackles, 73 were solo, a pick, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. I mean, he played well. He played phenomenal for Pittsburgh. And I don't know, man. He was a bright spot for the Steelers. He's a no-nonsense type of guy. I mean, he was one of those guys that called out the Steelers when you guys all remember the Kansas City game with Travis Kelce. It looked like we're just not going to cover him. One of the best receiving tight ends in the history of the National Football League. They were throwing him the ball, and there wasn't a guy within 15 yards of him on plays. Deshon Elliott is a guy that's calling it out. He didn't call people out by name, but he started calling it out. I think he was actually calling out the schemes, but he kind of pulled back from that a couple days later. But I like a guy like that. He's fiery. Not again, no nonsense, not going to BS you with a whole bunch of stuff, just coming out there to play hard. And the Steelers got him for a bargain basement. Was it 2 years, $6 million or $7 million last year? I mean, re-signing him, I think it makes sense. It seems like he's found a home in Pittsburgh. He said as much that he wants to be a Steeler. One of the things about Deshon Elliott, again, he just turned 28 years old. So we're not talking about a guy, that's on the other side of 30, which a lot of people think, oh, if you're 30, you can't play anymore. Well, he's not there. And he literally just turned 28. So we get 2 full seasons if he's back with the Steelers before he even gets to 30 years old. So, I don't know. I mean, you look at his career, he's bounced around. There's no doubt about it. And I guess the big question is why? When he actually played, his first year with the Ravens, it was 6 games, didn't play much. Special teams guy, okay. Next year, he does play a lot. Year after that, gets hurt, doesn't play. Ravens give up on him. Goes to Detroit. Then he goes to Miami the next year. So in the years that he actually played, he's been in the league 6 seasons. So 4 years, he's played more than 6 football games. In his first year, again, hurt, didn't play a whole lot as a rookie. So 4 of the 6 years when he played more than 6 football games, he's averaging 91 and a half tackles a year. That doesn't sound like a guy that can't play in the National Football League. It doesn't sound like that at all. And I've heard people say, well, he was great for the Steelers last year, but how good was he before? And again, he's averaging 91 and a half tackles a year whenever he plays more than 14 games. And he's done that 4 out of 6 seasons. That's pretty good, people. That's not a bum. That's not a slouch. I mean, if the Steelers are serious about solidifying their secondary, I would say this is a guy that has to get it done. Now, do you have to go out and sign him for, I don't know, a 2 or 3 year deal for $35 million? No, you don't have to do anything like that. But you probably need to up it to 6 or 7 million a year. You can do that, and that would be fine. It would be perfectly fine if you do that. Don't overpay, but lock this guy up. Lock this guy up because he was a breath of fresh air to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Breath of fresh air, played every game, hard-nosed, allows Minka and other guys to do other stuff. I like him in our secondary, people. I like him in our secondary. So let's go to the poll question. So Deshon Elliott, should the Steelers prioritize extending Deshon Elliott's contract? A, absolutely. He's a key part of our future. B, only if the price is right. Don't overcommit. C, I'm undecided. I need to see more. Or D, no, there are other priorities to focus on. And the only thing that I would say about that, especially D, obviously we want to spend more money on offense. And that's true, but you can't forget about defense. You know, we can't just say, okay, we're going to sign offense, offense, offense. That's great, but you got to be able to stop people too. Now, I'm the first to tell you the Steelers' defense hadn't been spectacular, especially last year, and it wasn't, but you still have to have guys. You still have to have guys. So make sure you put a 3 in front of your answer so we know exactly what poll question that you guys are answering. Let's move on. All right. So, minicamp just ended for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've got the long wait to training camp. So, we're doing a little bit of a review. So, what happened with Steelers minicamp? Now, we're going to get into this in a lot more detail next week. But just as a quick review, like what are some of the things that we saw from the Steelers minicamp? Well, the first thing is that they got out healthy. That's first and foremost. Now, I understand there's going to be some people that said Donald Parham, he got hurt, backup tight end, and you never want to lose anybody. So I want to make that very clear. You don't want anybody getting hurt. You don't want to lose anybody. But big picture, he was the number 4 tight end. So if you're going to lose somebody to injury, and it's football, you're always going to lose somebody to injury. That is not, roster crushing. That's not season devastating type of an injury. Again, you don't want anybody going down, but that happened and you're like, dang, that sucks, but it's not going to crush the season. It's not like your left tackle going down, God forbid. Let's knock on some wood there. So they got out healthy, which is good because you got to get through those things. They're important practices. Steelers got through it healthy. Another thing that kind of jumped out, Minkah Fitzpatrick, ladies and gentlemen, he looked outstanding. Now, yes, it's helmets and shorts, no shoulder pads. I totally understand all of that. You are right. But I said this last week, and I'm going to say it again today. Would you have rather him look bad in the helmets and shorts or good in helmets and shorts? Because if it's me and you ask me, I would rather see him look good versus bad. Period. End of story. Minkah looked good, looked rejuvenated, almost like somebody that is getting a fresh start at something. And maybe Minkah realizes that, hey, I didn't do enough last year. Also, Minkah realizes, hey, maybe we're going to do some different stuff. Maybe we're going to get into some things that's going to allow me to be the playmaker that I was previously. We're going to find a lot out. We'll talk about that a little later and into next week, what it looks like. But yeah, I feel like Minkah, he stood out. I mean, it's not just me saying that. That is what happened. Minkah stood out, was making plays all over the football field, basically back to being the Minkah that we all know and love. But again, I want to caution, helmets, shorts, no pads. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't think the pad part with Minkah is the problem. I think, and again, I've said this, I think it was scheme that they just didn't allow him. They didn't trust the corners, so they had him playing center field and not being involved too much. I think that's going to change this season. And it's going to have to if the Steelers are trying to get to where they want to go. It's going to have to change. But Minkah absolutely did look good. The addition to Thornhill is going to help him too. Because, the Steelers, obviously, there are a ton sub packages. But even in their sub packages, a lot of people, they think DB, they think nickel, they think corner. Steelers do a ton of sub packages just in nickel where they have 3 safeties out on the football field, which, again, allows Minkah to do other stuff. So I think Thornhill is also going to be able to help with what's going on in the secondary, and it's going to help Minka. But he definitely looked good. Absolutely looked good. As far as the defense, look, there's going to have to be more imagination. Going to have to be a ton more imagination to what is going on the football field. That was the thing that got the Steelers in trouble last year. They were just so vanilla, especially near the end of the year, and teams knew exactly what they were doing, and they just steamrolled us. Just steamrolled us. I mean, that Baltimore game, I mean, they knew exactly what we were going to do, and we had no stop for it. We had nothing. So don't be so vanilla on defense. We saw some of that. A surprise, and maybe it was a surprise, but somebody for everybody to keep an eye on. Dante Kent. Keep your eye on him. And look, he's going to be battling for, I mean, he's a 7th round draft pick. He's going to be battling for that position of nickel corner. A lot of people think Brandon Echols, that's his job. We've seen Echols play a lot on the outside, but I think Echols is probably going to be in there. The real battle is who's the backup. Is it going to be him or Beanie Bishop? Now, look, I'm telling you right now, Echols is faster than Beanie Bishop. And I'm 100% not sold on Beanie Bishop. We seen it last year. I'm not so sold on him. He struggled, but he's now got experience. And that experience has to count for something. It absolutely does. So we'll see. That's one of the position battles. Obviously, we'll have a podcast on what position battles that we should be looking at training camp. That'll come down the road here as we got some time to put all that good stuff together. But just keep an eye on him, because Dante Kent flashed more than once. He flashed a couple of times. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens there. But let's go to the poll question, people. Poll number 4. What rookie did you want to see shine the most during OTAs and minicamp? Was it A, Will Howard, B, Caleb Johnson, C, Jack Sawyer, and D, Derek Harmon? So what rookie did you want to see shine during basically the offseason period, OTAs, minicamp? Howard, Will Howard, Caleb Johnson, Jack Sawyer, or Derek Harmon? Make sure you put a 4 in front of that number so you know exactly, or we know exactly what poll question that you are answering. So, look, ladies and gentlemen, the offseason is over. It is officially over. And now we look towards the season. Training camp will be here in a couple of weeks. Call it 6. It's a nice fresh break. And then we got to get after it. I mean, look, July 23rd is when they report. First practice is July 24th. It'll be here before you know it. So lock in and get ready. I've said this before. I believe the Steelers have a better roster than what they had last year. I think they do. I just look at each and every position where they upgraded, where they made changes. The Steelers are better. May not end that way, but I believe they are right now. You know, I saw it today. 8.5 is the Steelers over under. Everybody's taking the under. It's the 3rd year in a row that everybody's taking the under on the Steelers win total. At some point, I think the national media just has to say, you know what, and this is the approach that I've taken. Until I see him have a losing season, I'm not going to believe it. And not only that, their schedule, while it is difficult, it's not near as difficult as it was last year. That's number 1. And again, the Steelers are better. They're a better football team. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, man. Really looking forward to it. So, like I mentioned before, we'll be back next week, breaking more down in more extensive detail on exactly what happened at minicamp. So appreciate you all doing that. Again, that's all I got for you today. Again, like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in that comment section like you guys always do. Hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. Remember to sign up to also become a member. Make sure you do that. 5 different tiers. Always special treatment in the lives. We appreciate you guys. Thank you, and aloha.